In this video, I'll describe the method of placing the bread and wine on the altar using the method described in the Roman Missal. Unfortunately, this isn't always followed. The general instruction of the Roman Missal has in number 75. The bread and wine are placed on the altar by the priest to the accompaniment of the prescribed formulas. And in number 140, it has a similar instruction: the bread and wine for the Eucharist are carried to the celebrant, who places them on the altar. So an altar server will place the Roman Missal on the altar, and also two cloths, a purificator and the corporal. And the altar server might also optionally place the chalice on the altar. The altar server then hands the paten with the bread to the priest, who holds it with two hands slightly above the altar and says, "Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, for through your goodness we have received the bread we offer you, fruit of the earth and work of human hands, that will become for us the bread of life." And that prayer might be said quietly. Then the priest takes the chalice from the altar and says quietly some prayers as he's pouring the water and wine into the chalice. Again, with two hands slightly above the altar, he says a prayer similar. "Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, for through your goodness we have received the wine we offer you, fruit of the vine and work of human hands, that will become our spiritual drink." So how might things go wrong with that procedure? One way things can go wrong is for the altar server to be placing the bread on the altar rather than the priest doing that. And that can kind of come about because of what's known as the stack, where you have a chalice with the paten on top of it. And then when the altar server places that stack on the altar, he's in effect placed the bread on the altar. And another way things can go wrong is that you have an empty chalice placed on the altar by the altar server, which is correct, as I demonstrated before, but the priest not picking that up, or the deacon not picking it up and adding the wine to it while it's there on the altar. And then you've got the wine on the altar without the prescribed formula that's required. In that GIRM number 75, the bread and wine are placed on the altar by the priest to the accompaniment of the prescribed formulas. Father Dennis Malarski has written about this problem in a number of books, including this one, Q&A the Mass. And on page 51, he has a careful reading of the rubrics of the sacramentary and of the text of the GIRM indicates that there is no justification for the all too common practice of a priest receiving the bread and wine, placing them on the altar, lifting each high in the air while saying the prayer, and then placing them on the altar a second time. Placing the Eucharistic elements on the altar is an action that should be done once and only once! Exclamation mark. Another document that draws attention to this is a 2006 Celebrating the Mass of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of England and Wales. It's got a section number 181, which has the heading, "Placing of the Offerings on the Altar." It is most appropriate that the bread and wine are placed on the altar only when the relevant prayers are said. At a Mass with a deacon, the priest carries the bread to the altar, says the appropriate formulary, and then places the bread on the altar. The deacon prepares the chalices, passes it to the priest, who says the appropriate prayer, and then places it on the altar. This document's got a foreword by Bishop Arthur Roach, then the Bishop of Leeds, and now the Cardinal at the dicastery of divine worship and the discipline of the sacraments. Perhaps some viewers are still not convinced. Consider this part of the general instruction of the Roman Missal number 178, describing what the deacon does. After this, he hands the priest the paten with the bread to be consecrated, pours wine and a little water into the chalice, saying quietly, by the mystery of this water, etc. And after this, presents the chalice to the priest. He may also carry out the preparation of the chalice at the credence table. So if it was acceptable for the deacon to be pouring the wine into the chalice while it was on the altar, it wouldn't sort of say for the deacon to pick that up and then pass it to the priest. If you've got a chalice with wine on the altar, it's simpler for the priest to pick it up. No chance of a mishap. But the instructions have these, the instructions are pass the paten to the priest, pass the chalice to the priest, because of the requirement for the correct formularies to be said when things are placed on the altar. Perhaps this objection may be made: what happens if there are 10 ciboria with bread? It takes too long for the priest to put them on the altar. Therefore, altar servers should put these ciboria with the bread on the altar when they prepare it. And my response: what should happen is, after the priest has placed the paten with the bread on the altar with the prescribed formula, then the servers bring trays with the ciboria to the priest, and he places them on the altar. Even if there are concelebrants, only one priest does this, following general instruction of the Roman Missal number 214. The preparation of the gifts, CF numbers 139 to 146, is carried out by the principal celebrant, while the other concelebrants remain at their places. Even if you have a huge number of ciboria, say 100, 1,000, for some very large-scale masses, there are instructions on this. The 2016 Guide for Large-Scale Celebrations has. The gifts for the Eucharist should be placed on the altar. If, given their large quantity, this is not possible, prior to the presentation of the gifts, some non-concelebrating priests, deacons, or instituted acolytes, carrying a ciborium in their hands, should position themselves near the altar. So there's no justification for not following number 75 of the Roman Missal. The bread and wine are placed on the altar by the priest, to the accompaniment of the prescribed formulas. Here are 2 practical suggestions for avoiding the wrong procedure in your community. One is to avoid the stack. Don't place the paten on the chalice. Have them separate on the credence table. And my other suggestion is always do the preparation of the chalice at the credence table, pouring the water and wine in at the credence table. In effect, what I'm saying is, don't have the altar servers, when they're preparing the altar, have them only put the 3 things there. Don't put the chalice on the altar as well, because then you have the risk of the wine being poured into the altar while it's there. So in this video, I've gone through, in particular, general instruction of the Roman Missal number 75. The bread and wine are placed on the altar by the priest to the accompaniment of the prescribed formulas. I think it's a valuable, a key text, a valuable one to know, to be able to recite, to train altar servers in, so that point goes home. I've also talked about how GIRM number 140 has a similar instruction about the priest being the one placing the bread and wine on the altar. And I've also, we've looked at GIRM number 178, describing how the deacon's passing things to the priest, so that he's the one placing them on the altar. Please spread the word about this. Liking the video and having comments on the video might help that process. And thank you for watching. I hope it's been helpful.